What's up, guys? It's Wick. Um, this is the video I've been putting off making for about 2 months while we were both qualifying for and fighting during Chalons or Austerlitz, whatever it was called. This is the one I've been most worried to make. I do think after this video is made, it's going to create a lot of like almost a Cold War in this new aspect of the game. I've been really excited to see players take heart on the Buffs video in terms of choosing generals. I've also been really pissed because through Chalons before, we didn't think twice about hitting 20 million reigns because we knew there was garbage leading those reigns. It was like Shajar Aldor and Baybars because it was Alissa and Ludwig. Now I'm seeing people using Pyrrhus and Solt and Tureen and Dimitri and all the reinforcing generals, and it was like hitting a brick wall during the Chalons this time. We're no longer punching above our weight class. We're people caught up with that thing. So, barring my alliance kicking me out because they're so pissed at me for sharing all this stuff, I think this one's going to be even worse because I think that this is a concept that's going to be transformative to your game. Again, I apologize for the time between my vids. I don't like to make vids during Chalons because it's really literally working against my team. I also do have a job. I thought, instead of movies this time, for the sake of brevity, I'm doing memes. This does happen, by the way. It's the worst part about being a surgeon. You'll be scrubbed. It's like for anybody out there that is a surgeon, because I know there are guys who play the game that are surgeons. They usually reach out. This is like the worst. Like you have this pre-scrubbing like process where you itch every corner that has ever itched, and you like adjust yourself. You retie your scrubs and make sure they're tight and they're not like loose. It's just funny how the inside stuff about being a surgeon. Um, but I want to show you some. I'm going to start this video off a little different. I'm going to show you some battle reports, and this is from Server War a couple months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, and I went over to the enemy throne. I don't usually expect to conquer a throne, but I'll go and hold. I was holding temples or towers. This is me holding the south tower, the one that speeds the clock up when I'm trying to conquer alone, and I'm holding it with a full size mounted march. And in comes a K40. I was K41 at the time. I'm two now, so I'm K41 and a brand new K41 at that. And I'm holding it with a mount march. Yes, I have the guy outsized for the marches because I have a historic and I have, the level up on him. He's a K40, I'm a K41. And I'm holding it with mount and he's hitting me with range. Now, if you take a look, I won. I won pretty handily. He lost 3 million troops, 3.8 million. I lost 1.4 million and only had a few die. I didn't even fill my hospital at this point. I'm holding with Polygonus, and he's got Charles. Now look at the stats, right? I've got a 10 million powered mount. He's got an 11 million fully ascended Charles. I've got a Martinez, right? Fully ascended. I'll show you at the end of the video why. And Eleanor is his assist, just pretty bang in general, right? And if you look at our buffs, right, and this is again same thing. So like look at this. He actually came back at me with a second march that he amped up his troops to the higher level, thinking, oh, this can't be. You can't hit a mount with the range and have a more powerful general and lose. Doesn't make any sense. And again, same guy, same attack, holding a tower, so there's no sub cities involved. You have your buff differences. Yeah, I had him out buffed. He had a 24-29 range attack. That's a pretty decent range attack for K40, and I'm 28-75. That's K41 level. And still, like you wouldn't expect this out of an attack. Most people looking at this report would be scratching their head like, wait, welcome every other time I hit a mount army. And even if they have great buffs, it still is such a lopsided battle. Why am I losing? T15 versus T15. Houston, we have a problem, right? They're going like, what the hell? And everybody's scratching their head, and then they look at the battle reports. And then it happened again. It's funny, like different K40s from this alliance, and much props to them. They were super cool. Kept hitting me, and this is a second hit. I never replenished the army from the previous hit. I'm still in that keep, in that tower, and he hits me with yet another mounted track. Now I moved in ground. Why the hell is he losing? He's probably scratching his head again, going, "What the f?" Again, same kind of thing, like scratching your head, like this is weird. Um, Buffs, yes, his buffs. This guy's buffs were pretty rough. Again, it's a mount versus ground. It tends to even out, even with a buff difference. But I could show you more and more of these. Here's a guy, another Polygynous losing to Subutai. I only lost 187 million. He's got 374 million. The whole army gets wiped out. Who again? He's using great. He's using great generals. These are two of my favorite ranged. If I wasn't running so low on runes, I probably would have tried to do this. But again, like I lost. I mean, he lost. There's no reason that this really should happen when you have a very powerful his general, his range general, his fully ascended Subutai has more power than mine. And it goes on and on. I mean, right? You want to see it again? Here's a mount versus my ground. Stronger general. I don't have my second general here 5-star. Again, you're going to look at the end of the video and I'll explain that. Buffs, again, right? Mounted against ground. I've got him out buffed, somewhat. But, people are thinking, man, Wick, you hit like a fucking tank. No, 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 I'm not a lot more special than most K41s or 42s. But I'm going to explain it all to you now. And this is going to kick off a Cold War, I'm telling you, in terms of March builds. So if you look right here at the layers, the layperson will look at this and go, look at the ground troop layer. He had 1,000 and 100 survived. But let's take a closer look at that, right? 100 survived, right? Wounded, survived. That's a buff. That's research. That's a rebate. Those troops died and the game brought them back to life. It's in your research. Your death to survival percentage. His death to survival percentage at max research is 10%. So those troops were dead. I wiped out his layers. People are looking at this report going, well, he didn't wipe out my layers. I have 100. No. That's his layers. 100. Okay? Look at all of his layers. That mounted troop that survived there, the 130,000, those are zombies, right? They were brought back from death. I wiped him out and he got a rebate of these troops that he doesn't have to heal because the game gave it to him. So I annihilated his army, right? Look at them all, right? I'm going right down his troops. Let's look at my army. What did I do different than him? What do you notice here? Look at my range troop layer there, right? 69, 62 survived, only 38 died. Look at my mount layer there, right? We all know mount should kill mount. We all know that if you throw mount at mount, like for my trap keep video, that's one of the best attacks that should wipe out mount. Look at my layer. I do not have a 50% death to survival. I don't. My layers survived. There are people in this game with 9 million marches now that are running 1,000 layers, which blows my mind because you're going to run out of layers. The last attack before you lose is going to be like 2 of your layers against 60 of the enemies. And if you watch my layering video, you know you're not supposed to win. No matter what mismatch there is, no matter what buff you have, you're not going to win. And the last turn of that battle, and I'll go over it in a second, is going to be 60 layers going up against 2 or 1. And that's the difference. I really blew my mind when I was going into All-Stars and Battlefield last 2 times, and I'm going against guys who are K44s with 9.5 million marches, especially with the new Napoleon march and Messena. That's sick combo. I think it's the biggest march in the game, march buff. Where they've got like a 9.3 million march, and I'm looking at 1,000 layers. And they're going to be, essentially, you're neutering your march because they're going to run out of layers halfway through the battle. This is old. I will not show you what my layers are now. I have refined this, but I'm not sharing that. You guys can figure that out. But this should be transformative, and I'll show you where to start. So if you, again, look down my layers, show me any of my layers that ran out. So at the end of this battle, I had all 60 layers, and this poor bastard ran out of layers. I'm sure he's going to be watching this video. Maybe he won't, but I'm sure he'll be watching this video going, that son of a bitch. And I love it. All right. That's what I love about this game. So let's do the wick dry erase board explanation. And this should hopefully elucidate this whole thing to you guys. Let's pair and let's simplify this. I'm not going to play the extrinsic game here. I'm going to simplify it like I did my layered video to help you guys understand. Player A and player B have identical everything. Keep level buffs, troop layers. And let's just take and simplify it and take 2 layers of ground troops, the T-15 and 14, and ground troops, GAMS, ground, archer, mounted, siege. Okay, so that's the 4 troops in order of the way that they go down your list. And player A decides to build with 1 troop in the layer. Player B builds layers with 10,000. And let's simulate, and this is turn 0, right, before the battle begins. This is them meeting each other, just getting about 2,700 yards or feet away. And this is before the battle begins. Player A has these tiny little freckly layers. Player B has these monster layers. After 1 turn, let's assume, which the going theory is that the top layer is the one targeted first by the lower layers. And then it moves down, and the layers in between, as they get attacked, that 1 troop will take counter damage and kill itself whenever it takes its turn. At the end of turn 1, what are you going to get? This is turn 1. Guy on the right, the little mini layers attack those troops. And this might not be perfect. Again, if you think it out, it might be a little different. But I'm trying to elucidate what the difference in layers does. Ground, T-15 layer, wiped out both sides. Right? Everybody got their turn and took those layered turns. But the one on the left just wiped out all of his layers. Again, you have to think of extrinsic later. I'm trying to simplify here. The one on the right, let's just say the one got a kill on the other because they were in range and the extrinsic factor. Siege hit the siege, and the one took a turn at the one with 10,000 layers and killed 1 guy. Well, the one on the right is going to get 9,999 from a layer from 10,000. Guy on the left's left with 1 layer of 1 million left. Right? It might actually be like 999,000. But again, I'm simplifying. So when that turn goes, and this is turn 2, I didn't write that out here. Guy on the left gets to go first, let's say. And he takes his turn because he's only got 1 layer. It's 1 shot of that 1 million layer hitting the 999,000. Let's say it's mounted. Let's say it's ground. Again, ignore the extrinsic here. You can play that with that later. The guy on the right, when it's his turn, all layers take their turn on that 1 million. What's going to happen? It's a bloodbath. So again, if you're gonna be good at this game, you got to pay attention to the details. The difference is in the details. And my proposition for all the people out there that are going to be sharing this on the Discords and whatever is that you should be starting with a 0.1 to 0.3% march size layer. Utilizing, if you do the 56 layers that are not your 4 meat layers that you're going to be using for the big monster marches at the top, 5.6 to 16.8% of your total march size. In other words, you're still leaving 85 to 95% of your power in your meat layer with this build. And people are looking at it going like, oh my God, that's so extreme. It's not. You're still seeing a massive amount of power in the effective layer, right? So if you have a million march size, a 0.1 to 0.3% march size is a 1,000 to 3,000 layer. If you have a 3 million march size, you should be starting at 3,000, moving up to 9,000. If you have 7 million, which most K-42s have, or 6 million, somewhere in between there, you should be between 7,000 and 21,000 per layer. You should not be using 1,000 layers. You're going to run out of layers. You're going to be ending up severely disadvantaged and not getting the most out of your meat layers because you chinced and you were cheap and didn't want to feed the lower layers. So, questions to ask yourself where to take this. Should different troop types have bigger layers than others? Should different marches use different layers? In other words, archer versus siege, mount versus ground. The keys to the answer to this is that the troops, the knowledge of the most important fact when you're doing your extrinsic battles is that troops stop moving. In other words, speed stops counting when an enemy is within its range and it can fire. As long as the enemy's in range, it will not move. You don't have mounted troops moving past ground troops to kill siege until all the ground is gone. That should help you understand which layers you want to be bulking up, which layers you can skimp on a little bit. Layers' biggest function is to take the hit in lieu of functional or big layers. It's huge, right? You saw it here. That one layer up top is taking that one hit from a million, and it's going to sacrifice itself and throw itself on the excuse me on the on the sword, so that the other guys get the turn to wipe it out. That's the proposition of when someone has heavy layers, and those layers are still around when yours are gone. It doesn't matter if you're sending ground at siege, well, maybe somewhat, but it's still gonna be a very tall bar to pass and win whenever you're being that cheap. So the other art, if you will, of building marches. Again, this has been something I've been asked repeatedly over the last 3 months. Is why, whenever, if again, and this is why I'm going to show you. If everybody knows my favorite part of the keep is the rally spot, because that's where the key to the game is. It's where they give away all the stats on all the troop types. But the other function is building marches. And if you go to your marches and you go to a build, and this is old again, this is not who I'm using anymore. And you go to Polygonus Martinez, and you look at, and the game has told us, or the developers have told us, that they block out things that aren't activated for an assistant. So here, if you look at Martinez, yes, his dragon is only useful for activating his buff. It doesn't actually count any of its traits. And if you tap on that little magnifying glass to the right of Martinez, you're supposed to see things that are colored, and the color is alive, are supposed to count. Things that are not colored are supposed to not count. So when you have a skill book that's redundant, it gets grayed out. People know that. If you have a skill that two generals that aren't compatible, his yellow gold book on the left will be grayed out. You see all of his general statistics are grayed out. What's interesting is the ascension is not grayed out, but it says explicitly this does not work on your assistant general. That might be a glitch. But what really stands out here is power. It's colored. I have two Edward Teaches, and I have one as the assist general on the wall. I have one that I use for rallies, because when he came out, he was that baller, especially as a universal general, beating out a lot of qualified generals. And I said, let me just try this. Let me try hitting an Arctic Barb castle with identical marches, and you can find very easily two Arctic Barb castles that are identical, and hit it with the same two generals as the assistant with my Sir Philip. And yes, I'm still using them. I'm old school. Don't judge me. And the damage was different. The power played. You guys feel free to replicate it. I know that right now there's a motivation to move this Martinez into, I just find another cheap Martinez, same skill book, ruin him up, and not have to have wasted all the Blood of Ares and move him into the Senate where you get all these extra buffs. But I think the power plays. And for that reason, I have hero gear on him. I put a dragon on him. And I think his power plays, and I think it makes an effect on the battlefield. Feel free to copy the experiment. Feel free to copy that. But I hope that at least the March layer information is helpful. I can say that most of the people I've given that advice to have said it's transformative when other people are not using it. What I'm fearful of is that it's going to start an arms race. I think people are going to all start using it, and everybody's going to start really jacking up their layers, where you're going to see 30, 50, 70,000 layers on all their troops. And it's going to be, if you don't do it, you're going to get your ass handed to you. Good luck to you. I hope nobody gets pissed at me like I ruined the game. I think it's fun watching these things play out. It's one of the things I love about this game is the cerebral part, not the coining part, and something that you can take somebody who is a heavy coiner and not the brightest game player and watch them get their asses kicked. So go get them. I'm with you. I'm gunning for the coiners too.